Hey everyone, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. the Oracle. Welcome to the College Daily Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. That's right, PFF has a brand new podcast dedicated to college football, and specifically, we will be looking at college football through the lens of daily fantasy sports. From now till the end of either the college football season or the world, whichever ends first, we will be coming to you each and every week on PFF Radio, which you can follow on Twitter at PFF Radio. And we will be just one of the many awesome shows brought to you this season by the writers at PFF Fantasy, which you can find on Twitter at PFF_fantasy. I will be the host of the College Daily Slant for the 2015 college season, and I will be joined each week, as I am now, by my co-host, Wes Huber, the boss hoss of football knowledge and a PFF Fantasy college football lead writer. You can follow him on Twitter at PFF_Wes, and you should follow him because he drops pearls of college football wisdom on the daily. Wes, how's it going?
Doing great. How are you, Matt?
I am doing fantastic. Wes, let's jump into it. Do you mind giving us a quick introduction to what you do for PFF and PFF Fantasy? To quote Office Space, what would you say that you do here?
All right. Well, I mentioned in our previous conversation that I started out with PFF on the main side, which is totally separate from the fantasy side. Working player participation, worked my way up, made some connections, and got to know Mike and Jeff, and they got to talking with me. Sent them over a few of my ideas, and we've taken off and we're hoping to really push the college fantasy product and bring as much great information that we can from our research that we do over watching all the college games. I mean, we've got I don't know how many hours, thousands and thousands of hours, and hundreds of individuals breaking down every aspect of every game, not only NFL but absolutely in college, and that's my wheelhouse. And I have pretty exclusive access to those statistics, and I'm really looking forward to providing them to help you with your DFS rosters.
Awesome, Wes. I am so excited to do this show with you. Really excited to see college football games start in only 2 short weeks, and of course, really excited to read all of your college football content this season. And of course, everybody can read Wes's work and so much more at the new and improved Pro Football Focus, a sleek website almost as sleek as that segue. The new site makes it easy for you to find all the pro, college, and fantasy content you desire. In particular, you should subscribe to PFF Fantasy Gold for the low cost of $29.99. That package gives you all the goods, all the access you need to PFF Fantasy articles, tools, data, rankings, and you even get a 2015 draft guide to help you dominate your leagues and make tons of fantasy enemies this upcoming season. All right, and for those of you who are into college football, Wes and I will be there with you every step of the way on the College Daily Slant. Not only will this be a show about college football DFS, it will be a show that I think any football fan can enjoy, because once we get going into our main focus, that will be on the best players and also the undervalued players in college football today. And so even though we will be going position by position through our DFS plays and our fades, I think that the show will benefit people who play dynasty, developmental, and even seasonal college football. So basically, for the people who love the college game, this will be the one-stop show for you. Every Thursday, we will get you prepared for Saturday's slate of games and give you all the information that you need. So that's when the season starts. Till then, we've also got a full agenda to cover. This week, Wes and I are going to run through some of the big current storylines in college football, and we will also cover some general strategies that could help you navigate those sharky college football DFS waters. And then next week, we will dive head into a position-by-position analysis of the top skill players in college football. Wes, do you have any words for everybody on what they should expect this season from the College Daily Slant?
Yeah, I mean, just to cover the same things you had already touched on, I think this will be great for not only redraft players looking on their waiver wire, but of course the main focus will be DFS. But the offshoot of that is that it's going to help you out with your Devy leagues and your dynasty leagues. And you really summed up the purpose of the show. And I think basically we're going to give you the information. We're We're going to let you know the things that are going to help you out, help you reduce your risk, and hopefully win some cash this year.
All right. And also, at the end of the show, we are going to give you a sneak at a couple of the Thursday FanDuel picks for the opening day of college football, September 3rd. And obviously, we're going to give you many more next week, but so stay around for that. Wes, let's jump into it. There are 5 big conferences in college football. Let's cover the biggest storylines of the upcoming season. Let's go conference by conference through the Power 5. What are the crucial storylines in college football that you think will determine how the 2015 season plays out?
All right, well, we can start in the Big Ten. I mean, we got to start with the defending national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes. What's going to happen at quarterback? Is it going to be J.T. Barrett? Is it going to be Cardale Jones? Whatever happens there is going to be a game changer in the entire fantasy landscape. We got position changes galore. We got Braxton Miller moving to wide receiver. We've got what's his name? Jalen Marshall, of course, is going to be suspended week 1 with Joey Bosa. But then we also have a new offensive coordinator with Ohio State, Ed Warner, taking over. So it'd be interesting to see how they're able to replace Tom Herman and get the Buckeyes rolling again. They're going to start out with the team that they lost to in the first week, so we'll see. The other thing, Michigan State. How are they going to overcome the loss of Ed Davis at linebacker? They're going to have Connor Cook back for his finale, his Heisman campaign run. Then we're going to have Christian Hackenberg looking to turn his season around at Penn State, and he's got a bunch of new tools there with him, and that's looking good. Hoping to see him turn things around in year 2 of that offense. And of course, you got Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, who honestly is going to be just a big plus to college football in general, but it's also another big get for the Big Ten. Yeah, I mean, and they've got their own little quarterback controversy going on. Who are they going to go with? Jake Rudock from fresh off a transfer, or are they going to go with Shane Morris? Hopefully, it's Rudock. That would be the one that would probably benefit the team in the short term. And you got Nebraska, who just took Oregon State's coach Mike Riley. And he's installing his pro style scheme, and I'm really interested to see how that goes. We're going to see a Tommy Armstrong that sits in the pocket, and they got some great matchups throughout the year that could be fantasy gold mines to pretty much the entire fantasy format.
Yeah, I think one thing that's so intriguing about this conference, and normally I'm not really high on Big Ten quarterbacks, but you have a plethora of Big Ten quarterbacks who could actually be legitimate NFL prospects entering the 2016 draft. I mean, Cardale Jones, obviously, but then you have Connor Cook, Christian Hackenberg, who could rebound and enter the draft. I think it'll be really fascinating to see exactly how these quarterbacks take shape and really seeing them go head-to-head for this entire season. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now let's jump down to the Pac-12. We got a lot of exciting offenses in the Pac-12, and honestly, it's probably the most loaded conference in all of college football when it comes to wide receiver depth. Not really the top end, but just the depth at wide receiver is ridiculous. Start out with California. You got Jared Goff running the Bear Raid offense. Sonny Dykes' team finished 6th in passing offense last year, and honestly, I mean, they've got so many wide receiver options. It's just unbelievable. You got Kenny Lawler, Trevor Davis, just to name a few. Then we go down to Oregon. We got Vernon Adams Jr. We've got Jeff Locke, fighting over that spot. Of course, Vernon just passed his math test to get into the school. He's a dynamic athlete. He facing Washington last year, he threw for over 450 yards with 7 touchdowns. It was the biggest offensive explosion that Washington received from any quarterback. And then we've got Stanford. Stanford's looking just amazing right now. Now, their quarterback's not going to win a Heisman Trophy for you, but they've got a great defense. You can always count on Stanford putting a good defense out there, and they've got a trio of tight ends, and one of my big guys this year. We got Christian McCaffrey. I'm not sure if you're aware of his abilities, but when he was in high school, he put up almost 1,500 yards and 25 touchdowns rushing. He was also a dual threat with 40 receptions and almost 700 yards per season and another 13 touchdowns. And what's most impressive is to start the year last year, he wasn't getting any run at all. He was getting 4.4 snaps per game prior to week 12. He comes in, they finally start giving him some touches. After week 12, he got upwards of 20 touches a game. And he produced. He caught every catchable target during that time and put up an insane number, 5.7 yards per route run during that time. Then we got one of my big sleepers of the entire season, Jake Browning in Washington. Now he's young, and I totally understand the hesitation of trusting a true freshman. We're talking about a guy who threw 91 touchdown passes last year in high school football. One of the greatest high school quarterbacks of all time. He is the only high school quarterback to ever throw for 5,000 yards and 60 touchdowns 3 years in a row. He comes in a quarterback battle with Jeff Lindquist, and honestly, Lindquist he's the placeholder during practices. It's looking like he's going to be sitting on the sidelines holding the clipboard for Jake Browning. Then you got a dynamic pair of tight ends along with him, Darrell Daniels and Joshua Perkins, and Dwayne Washington looks solid as well in there as their running back.
Let's talk just a little bit about Vernon Davis, a fantastic athlete transferring from Eastern Washington as a senior, a graduated senior, so he can play right away at Oregon. Do you think he actually has the skills to transition successfully and play at the FBS level after his success in the FCS?
Yeah, Vernon Adams. Yeah, he's definitely got the ability. I don't have the numbers in front of me, his 40 times, but it's good. It's definitely in the low end of the spectrum for quarterbacks. He's got the mobility to evade the rush, and to be honest, he's playing in Oregon. He's going from Eastern Washington to Oregon. Huge upgrade in the surrounding talent. He's got Charles Nelson, Byron Marshall to throw the ball to. Honestly, he doesn't even have to be that great. If he's just average and he's able to put some rushing yards on the board, you can definitely put him into your fantasy lineups for sure. No doubt about it.
Awesome. Now let's transition to the SEC.
All right. Let's start with Alabama. I mean, let's see how they can recover. I'm interested to see how they're gonna come out and play after that big loss to Ohio State. They've lost 9 of their 11 starters on the offense. It'll be interesting to see how they turn that around. They've got a quarterback battle between David Cornwell, Jake Coker, and actually another true freshman, Blake Barnett. So that'll be interesting to play out. I mean, you got Derrick Henry in the backfield, Robert Foster, and our Darius Stewart. We're talking 5-star athletes here. There's high expectations. So we'll see how that goes. Then we go down to maybe a smaller school, but it has fantasy implications regardless in Kentucky. Mark Stoops just made the decision to go with Patrick Towles. I'm not sure I agree with that. The one thing that worries me there, the new offensive coordinator at Kentucky, when he was at West Virginia, he ran play action on 30% of his snaps. Well, at UK last year, Patrick Towles ran 15% of his snaps on play action, and he was horrendous. His numbers just plummeted. I think by 25% his QBR went down. It was pretty significant, and his completion percentage was pretty low as well. He doesn't throw well on the run. I think that they should have went with the young guy there. But another thing to factor in there is Boom Williams. Can he stay healthy? But then we have LSU. LSU's got another team there in the SEC that's just loaded with talent. We can see if I'm interested to see if Leonard Fournette can continue what he did last year. He had a great run at the end of the season when he pretty much took hold of that backfield. The Cam Cameron offense is perfectly suited to producing fantasy studs at running back. And I'll be interested to see what Brandon Harris can do. If he can turn into the dual threat quarterback that he showed us last year in limited time. He was averaging 6 yards a carry on the ground, which is, that's really good for quarterbacks. And he's got a dynamic set of wide receivers to throw to. Let's go down to another team. It's like Auburn lost a lot of offensive starters, and similar to Alabama and Auburn. They've got Jeremy Johnson coming in for Nick Marshall. They've got a JUCO absolute monster coming in, Javon Robinson. And here's the big question: can Duke Williams stay healthy? Can he stay out of trouble? He's been in the doghouse, in and out for 2 years now. I'm sure that fantasy owners are pretty nervous when it comes to whether this guy's going to keep his head together in the game and give and show us what he can do. He's a great athlete, and he's got a big NFL career ahead if he can just pull it together. Then, of course, you got Mississippi State and Tennessee with Dak Prescott and Josh Dobbs. We got, definitely going to have some big years out of those guys, put some yardage up on the ground. Really hoping Dak will show a little better ability at changing levels, getting down on those rushing attempts, keeping his legs safe. He's got good receivers, and then Josh Dobbs has Jalen Hurd. Jalen Hurd's a dynamic athlete. Go look up his statistics in high school; you'll be blown away. It's ridiculous, and I'm not trying to say that he's gonna accurately translate those high school statistics to college, but it's definitely a good start when you're evaluating what somebody can do. And I'll tell you another guy that was dynamic 2 years ago was Will Grier. He redshirted last year for Florida. This guy averaged 70 touchdown passes the last 2 years in high school. I'll be interested to see if Jim McElvain goes with Treon Harris. He's 5'11", great athlete. To me, he's more of an H-back, maybe option quarterback. I just don't see him as somebody to lead the offense. Really hoping he goes Will Grier there, and I think he's a fantasy monster. He's somebody that can really explode this year.
Now, one guy you didn't mention, but who's in the SEC, is De'Runnya Wilson. I think he's going to run cornerbacks all over the field this year.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on him? Big guy, not probably the next Mike Evans, but he has that size, and maybe he has that potential. What's your quick take on him?
Yeah, he finished, I think, number 8 in our PFF ratings from last year. He's a red zone monster. He's the kind of guy that could give you 3 touchdowns a game on certain weeks. And the good thing about it is he has Fred Ross on the other side pulling coverage away. His name might not sound as nice as De'Runnya Wilson, but he puts up some pretty good numbers, and he'll be an interesting low-priced bargain in DFS.
All right, let's go to the Big 12. What are your thoughts here?
Oh wow, Big 12. When I said that the Pac-12 was loaded with depth, the Big 12 is loaded with playmakers. Let's start with Baylor. Baylor, you got Art Briles, just lost his head coach Phil Montgomery to Tulsa, which that's a conversation for another day for the mid-major. Tulsa's going to be great. But yeah, we got Art Briles putting his son in charge of the offense, Kendall. Okay, now the thing about Kendall is he spent the past 5 or 6 years as the recruiting coordinator at Baylor. So he's the guy who's brought in all these tools, all these weapons, everybody that you've seen just put up these ridiculous numbers. It's been Kendall Briles bringing them in. Here's the thing. He gets to play with his toys now. He's going to have Katie Cannon. He's going to have Corey Coleman. And then here's my boy, Seth Russell. If there's anybody in the country that you can look at and say he's worth every penny that it takes to get him on my fantasy roster, Seth Russell is your man. He's going to put up monster stats. Honestly, I don't think that there's going to even be an afterthought of the loss of Bryce Petty and Antoine Goodley. I honestly think that they're going to be completely forgotten here pretty soon. And then you've got a 400-pound tight end to throw to on top of all that. Give me a break. All right, then let's go down to Kansas State, man. I feel sorry for him. Bill Snyder, he had a great run last year, and Tyler Lockett was a monster, a stud. He's going to continue to be one in the NFL for Washington, but I'm not real sold on the Kansas State fantasy prospects this year. They had 3 All-Americans. 6 players were on the Big 12 first team, and 6 more were on the second team. They've got one of those guys coming back, Glenn Gronkowski. He's a good one, probably the best fullback in the country, but I don't know who he's going to block for. It's interesting. All right, let's go down to Oklahoma. We've got the Sooners. Now, I'm going to be personally grading the Sooners this year. I'm really excited. They're bringing in the air raid offensive scheme from Lincoln Riley's bringing it over from East Carolina, and I'm sure you're aware of the monster seasons they put up there in East Carolina. But here's the thing: they will be tailoring that offense to include Samaje Perine. It's going to be a big year for the passing offense and the rushing offense, and it still remains to be seen who's going to be that quarterback. It's going to be Trevor Knight. It's going to be Baker Mayfield. I'm more interested in seeing Trevor Knight. I as far from a fantasy perspective, he may not have the arm of Baker Mayfield. He's got the mobility. He's got the ability to raise that fantasy floor that I always look for. I want to see if I can get 60 rushing yards out of him, 50 rushing yards. I'm starting out at 5 points. If I'm getting it from Baker Mayfield, I've got to get 100 yards passing before I even reach that point, and that's all you're going to get. I'm not saying that pocket passers can't win you some cash or some fantasy championships, but you got to pick the right ones. One of my biggest sleepers in the entire college football, though, is Mason Rudolph. I'm not going to go into it. I've been criticized in the past, but this man he has some measurables that compare to some of the NFL studs right now. Some of the guys that I'm not going to mention them. Like I said, I've been criticized for it, but Mason Rudolph is the man. Just remember that name, Brandon Shepard. And then of course we're going to go down to your school, your alma mater, TCU. They got Kenny Hill coming over from Texas A&M. He got in the doghouse there, but he's going to be sitting on the sideline watching Trevone Boykin score some touchdowns, and it's exciting times. Hopefully Josh Doxson's not out for very long. I'm not sure what's going on there. That's of course part of our conundrum with college football is the injury reporting. It's just not available, so we don't really even know what's going on with Josh Doxson right now. I know he had off-season surgery, but they're not even discussing his injury. And then of course they need to get Deontay Gray back as well.
So let's talk a little bit about Seth Russell. Out of all of those great quarterbacks or productive quarterbacks that Baylor has had in the last 5 years, going from RG3 up to Bryce Petty, where do you think Seth Russell ranks in those guys?
It's a tough sell. I'll be honest with you. I think the advantage that Seth has now, of course, we're going to need to see some production before we start putting him into the Hall of Fame. But the weapons that he has around him, I think set him apart. He's in the position to put up better numbers than all those guys. Now, I'm not going to say he's a Heisman candidate. I think he is, but there's a lot of other guys in that conversation. Honestly, the sky is the limit. The guy could be the top quarterback in all of college football this year, no doubt. I mean, there's so much depth at wide receiver. There is literally a second string at every position at wide receiver for that team that could step on the field right now and they wouldn't miss a beat. I mean, absolute monster athletes. It's ridiculous. You could talk about the Baylor wide receivers for days.
And I'm sure that we will in the upcoming season. Finally, Absolutely. Let's transition to the ACC. What are your thoughts on this conference?
Well, it's not my favorite conference this year, but there is some absolute value. There's value in every conference. Let's start with the best. I mean, we got Clemson. The far and away the team that's looking to take the ACC this year. Sorry, Florida State. But, let's start with Deshaun Watson. If he stays healthy, forget it. He's he's probably bringing his team close to the playoffs this year. He's got two of the most, if anybody in college football has the talent to match Baylor. Baylor's 1 and 2. It's Clemson with Artavis Scott, Mike Williams. Mike Williams is down right now with a hamstring injury, but the report is that it's minor, and I tend to believe that. He's not had a big issue with injuries since he's been in college, but Deshaun Watson has. That's what I need. We need him to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, stay on the field, they're looking good. They've got a nice sophomore running back in Wayne Gallman. I really think he's gonna put up some good numbers this year. Basically, just in the shadow of the other guys around him. There's just there's too many guys to account for in that offense. Very similar situation is in North Carolina. Now, he doesn't have the surrounding cast that Deshaun Watson does, but Marquise Williams is a great dual threat quarterback that, very similar to Dak Prescott, needs to get his pads down and protect his legs. But as far as athletes go, he's a monster. He reminds me a lot of Cardale Jones. He doesn't have the size, but the running style, the punishing running style when he has the ball. He's got some nice receivers there. Mac Hollins is I think a future NFL wide receiver who is a monster vertical threat. Then let's go down to another team that I'm going to be personally grading this year in Duke. They just lost a few players, but look, we got Thomas Sirk coming up, and what does he do? A dual threat quarterback, a guy that can run the ball and get you some fantasy points. And then one of the guys I'm big on there at Duke is Sean Wilson. He's down right now with lower leg injury, not really being reported, but if he can get back healthy, I really think he could have a good year. And then, of course, can't forget Florida State. I mean, it's ridiculous. They lost every player on offense, every starter that they had. It's okay. Let's go and run down the list of just skill positions. We got Jameis Winston. We've got Rashad Green. We've got Christian Green. We've got Carlos Williams. We've got Nick O'Leary. The entire offensive line. I mean, it's just a different team right now. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in that quarterback battle between Everett Golson and Sean McGuire. Really hoping Golson gets the job, just because why else bring him in if you're not going to play him?
Definitely. It will be very intriguing to see what happens with Florida State. And then also one final storyline, a bigger picture storyline. Will a team from the Big 12 make it into the college football playoffs this year? I think that the Big 12 champion is automatically disadvantaged because the conference doesn't have a championship game, and it means that the champion faces one less strong-ranked opponent than it otherwise would. So it might not be the case that a Big 12 team needs to go undefeated this year to make the playoffs, but it very well could be. And so it will be interesting to see if the Big 12 gets shut out of the playoffs 2 years in a row. Now, let's transition to college football DFS. Wes, you have experience and success in the college football DFS format. Going from 1 to 5, can you tell us what you think are the 5 biggest keys to college football DFS success? What are the most important hacks that you've learned along the way?
Sure, yeah. Well, you got to start in Vegas. You got to understand the stake that these odds makers have in their predictions. It goes beyond playing fantasy sports. We're talking serious dollars that they have on the line, and they need those predictions to work out. They've had a lot of time to refine their craft. They're good at it. They know what they're doing. Follow their predictions on the score. When you see a heavily scoring game that they predicted, you definitely want to get some exposure there. So yeah, first thing you want to do, always start with Vegas. Next, and this is something that's a tough lesson to learn, I think, is you need to wear blinders per se. You don't want to get into the type of situation where you're avoiding certain players because they burned you last week. You do that, and you're going to get burned again when you see them have a decent game. You've got to completely forget what happened last week. It doesn't mean you don't want to follow the number of touches, things like that, but you definitely need to consider every player every week, regardless of what they've done in the past to you. Let's go into injuries. It's something that we touched on earlier. The injury reporting in the NFL is great. You know, long ahead of time, and they actually get fined if they don't tell you who's injured and who's not going to play. In college football, it's not the case. You're not going to know. My advice is find some trusted sources and follow them. And you got to keep up with your injuries, your suspensions. Don't wait until the games start to find out the player's not on the field. It'll happen to everybody, trust me. But you just want to do your homework and make sure you're following that. Another thing we've already talked about would be my fourth tip, and that's your dual threat quarterbacks. In the NFL, you can wait on quarterbacks for days. You don't have to draft quarterbacks. You can wait and draft one of 20 guys that can help out your team. College is not that way. You got your dual threat guys. Those are the guys that are going to give you the major numbers, that higher fantasy floor that I already talked about. It's really important, and especially in DFS, you want to pay up for your quarterbacks. Now, there's one this week that I'm going to talk about later that isn't as expensive, but another thing you want to do is at tight end. You want to find guys that are going to get 5 to 7 targets and try to go as cheap as you can there at tight end. And then my last one is one that I'll talk about endlessly. If you read anything I write on Twitter, the touches are king. You want to know who's getting the touches, who's getting the targets. You want to stay on top of who got them last week, not only for the entire season. Who emerged last week with the most touches or targets, and you want to have exposure as many players getting as many touches as possible.
Wes, great stuff. And one more tip on top of that. Most of your points touched on either the production you could expect from players or the types of players worth rostering. I want to touch just a second on the two big different types of games that people can play in. There are cash games in which you essentially look to double your money by finishing in the top half of a competition. And then there are the tournaments or the guaranteed prize pools. They're often called GPPs. And in those tournaments, you are looking to multiply your money drastically by finishing near the top of a competition. And the way you want to approach these games is very different. In cash games, you're looking for consistency with your lineups. In GPPs, you're looking for volatility. So the way I kind of think of this is in cash games, the first question is, what are the chances that this player will hit his median level of production? And then the second question is, how many points can I expect at his median? In GPPs, it's the opposite. The first question is, how many points can I get at this guy's ceiling? And then the second question is, okay, what are his chances of actually hitting that peak production? With the two different types of games, you need to have two opposing mindsets when approaching them. Now, Wes, before we close, you had teased earlier that we were going to talk about some Thursday FanDuel plays. We're going to hit on a lot of these next week, but right now, go ahead and give us a little teaser. Who are two guys that you think will be good plays on the opening Thursday of college football, September 3rd?
All right, let's start in Oklahoma State, where my boy Mason Rudolph's going to be leading the charge. Let's look at a running back, Chris Carson. He's coming in at $7,900, and that's a little low, but there's a reason. He's somebody that just transferred over from JUCO. He's 6'2", 210 pounds, runs a 4.36 40. I really think he's going to have a great year, and I love that matchup against Central Michigan. Next guy I want to talk about is quarterback Thomas Sirk. Somebody I had already mentioned, and I am absolutely in shock that he's coming in at $5,100. He's going to justify that salary in probably the first half of the game. You got to get some exposure to Thomas Sirk, and I'm going to break the rules and go with a third pick. How about David Williams in South Carolina? He's already been told that he's going to be part of the pecking order there, and this guy had scholarship offers to all the big schools. He's in for a big year there with Brandon Wilds, and he only comes in at $5,000.
All right, Wes, great stuff. That will do it for the inaugural episode of the College Daily Slant. Be sure to tune in next week for our rundown of the top skill position talent in college football. And then the week after that, we will be bringing you our plays and fades for the first week of the college football season. Be sure to catch us on Thursdays on PFF Radio, which you can subscribe to on iTunes. And of course, you can listen to the show on Stitcher and Blog Talk Radio and watch the show on YouTube and the Fantasy Sports Network. For Wes Huber, whom you can follow on Twitter at PFF_Wes, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. Oracle. Thanks for tuning in.